Hi, welcome back to Channel 6 TV. Kenny Fogle here. Glad you could be with us today, talking to our veterans as we always do here on this channel. And that's one of the things we do like to highlight, is honor the veterans that have served our country over the many years and still serving in many ways. And one of those is a prime example is my guest today, Mr. Richard Ness. Richard, first of all, welcome to the show.
Well, welcome. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, well, you have been on several times. I've had you on talking about service projects, about the American Legion, about you had the flag burning here a ceremony a few weeks ago. You helped out on that, and the American Legion does so many things that it's kind of hard to keep up with all the different things that are going on there.
Well, as you know, the American Legion has grown quite a bit over the last few years. Veterans Affairs have become more predominant. At one time, it was not as predominant as far as the VA itself. A lot of us now are more interested in making sure that the VA itself is strong. In my particular case, in my era, you have things like Agent Orange, which is my red badge of courage now, is to make sure that the VA stays strong, the benefits are available to all veterans. And you got to remember that not all veterans stay in for 20 years. And in the 60s, we had people who were drafted or were RA, and they served their country, and they need the same appreciation, even though they only stayed 2 years or 3 years. So that's the direction I've been going on, and more of the VA.
A lot of stuff, the VA does, or the military in general, is not just readily available. I mean, I had somebody call a few days ago, how do I get a DD-214? Something as simple as that. You think, well, everybody knows how to do that. Well, they don't. So that's why, I sent them to the American Legion. I said, there's a service officer there. Stop by and talk to them.
Yeah. Well, Steve Tolliver does a very good job for us. We had Leon there for a couple of years, and that one simple thing with the DD-214 opens up so many opportunities.
So, we'll get back to American Legion in just a second, but several years ago, you made a conscious decision to get in the military. Were you drafted? Was you called up, or did you decide to sign up on your own?
No.
How'd that come about?
Well, two things. As those that are in the military know that I'm an RA, which means I wasn't drafted. I was 18 years old, was in the state of Maine. It was minus 20 degrees below zero, and I was looking to go south, for lack of a better word. But I did have the patriotic feeling in, because my father was a veteran, my grandfather was a veteran.
Yeah.
And so I raised my hand December 6th and thought it was the direction for me to go.
Yeah. And what did we get into when you got in?
Well, I actually got into the Army, became a paratrooper, which is, to me, was the cat's meow.
Jumping out of that perfectly good place.
Which is the cat's meow, as far as I was concerned. And I'm one of those that from the day that I raised my hand to get sworn in, 6 months later I was overseas in Vietnam. So that was a very quick turnaround in the 65, 66 of going to your next duty station. And other than that first 6 months, I never spent another day in an American post. I always spent it overseas.
It has to be quite a shock going from shoveling snow in Maine at age 18 to standing in Vietnam 6-8 months later. I mean, it's got to be a shock to that. I mean, you're still pretty young. I mean, you haven't seen the world yet, and you're in Vietnam with people not liking you there.
Well, as you know, you get dropped off, you stand there and the dust is blowing away, and you're trying to find out where you got to go, and 24 hours later you're on a helicopter and you're going out into the boonies.
Yeah.
And that's how quickly it changed at that period of time.
Grow up pretty fast, don't you?
And the military, absolutely.
So, where else? I mean, Vietnam, and you say you never came back to the native soil anymore? No,
I unfortunately I was felt the urge, and I spent almost 2 years in country. I served all my time with the 173rd Airborne. Was in communications and did everything from to wire to radio to courier, and traveled from one end of the country down to the other end. Pleiku, Benoit. Spent almost a full 2 years. Most of it out, not in the base camp at all.
Yeah.
So that's.
So at the end of that, you felt that I don't want to do this too much anymore. You had other things in mind.
Well, no, when it came time for me to go back home, I went back home and got out, and I must say within 2 years, I decided to go back into the reserves, and spent 2 years as an enlisted man. And at that age, I had an opportunity to go to OCS. And so I went back in and got my commission as an officer. And after 12 years, I got out as a first lieutenant. So I had my fill out at that time. So.
But you weren't quite done. I mean, you joined the Legion in Maine and continued on into Kentucky.
Well, I've been a member of a veterans organization since a week after I got out in 1969.
Took me a little while to get persuaded to get back
Yeah,
in.
my dad took me down. I've been a member of the VFW for 49 years. My dad packed me up and took me to the VFW post, which was down in the basement. And I've been a member of that organization for a full 49 years. And the Legion, I've been a member for 20 years.
Now, if somebody comes up to you and says, what does the Legion do? Is it really worth joining? How would you answer that question?
I'm going to tell you 100%, even if you're only a card-carrying member or you're a participant, our organization of what allows us to do more good for the community and the different projects, whether it be scholarships or whatever the case may be. And as I told you before, I'm very strong into the VA benefits, the opportunities to have burial items to your available to you. But there's just so much that you can't begin to list it off unless you had a cheat sheet. It started going down.
Well, just filling out the disabilities application is almost impossible for some people. I mean, I know. I mean, it's a very complicated process.
Well, they say you can do it online. But remember that if you do go to a local post and have the service officer there start the initial paperwork, and then from that point on, it becomes so much easier to have somebody to start it properly.
Yeah. So you're dealing with a somewhat government agency, and they never make it easy. But you've been with that, the American Legion. You served as commander yourself for several years.
I've served in Post 121. I was been commander for 2 years, and as you pointed out, sometimes that's interesting, but it's very rewarding too when you see the projects that you get completed, whether they be for the community, the local community, or the veterans, or your brothers and sisters in arms. So.
Well, as one voice, been in Congress, they do recognize the American Legion as a bona fide voice for the Legionnaires.
Think about the GI Bill to get you home. If it wasn't for the American Legion, that one benefit for veterans, for every veteran, was spearheaded by the American Legion years ago, and it's because of that a lot of veterans today, whether it be 2 years or 20 years, have an opportunity to use that one benefit.
So you finished your term as commander, but every time I go up the post, I still see you hanging around there a little bit. I think you like it.
I guess you would. I guess you would say it's hanging around. This year, I happen to be membership chairman, and so and I've also become commander of the SAL, which is the Sons of the American Legion. So I'm what they call a dual member.
Now, somebody out here wants to know what the Sons of American Legion wants to join. They're not a veteran.
No.
Then how do they do that?
Well, what happens is, remember, the Sons of the American Legion is you have to be a descendant of an American Legion member, and or if your parent adult parent, whether it be mother or father who served, has passed away, you can also join as a
Yeah.
Sons of an American Legion. But the primary function of it is to be a dependent of a veteran. And remember, we are the younger version of our parents. So as they went and did all the good stuff for the community and for veterans, as a Sons of an American Legion, you're the younger version of the parents, and you get the same opportunities and get the same feeling on doing good for veterans and the community.
Well, you get to see veterans of all ages right now, but the American Legion, most of them historically are getting a little older. I mean, we're looking at World War II veterans are basically gone. You got some Korean veterans left, Vietnamese veterans of the Vietnam War, but the ones from the Desert Storm and that, we're still having a hard time getting them to come back.
I think that has to do with the pressures that they have in today's, as far as keeping the family together, the cost of living. There's all kinds of things. And today, if you become a younger member of any of the organizations, it's just tough because of your other commitments, the baseball games,
Yeah.
etc. And as you know, the earlier veterans came home, the social network was the American Legion Post.
Exactly.
It was the Friday night supper. It was the dances, and we didn't have the TVs or the video games, etc. And I think eventually, as we settle down and our kids grow, we get more involved trying to help out.
Well, we're seeing more of PTSD now. We used to call it shell shock back years ago, but to me, the American Legion is a way that you can actually talk to somebody else that actually understands your language. Because you're at home, you can't explain to somebody else that wasn't in the military exactly what you did in Vietnam, that they'll completely understand it.
Well, again, it's more predominant in the words that we use, but I would hate to tell you that in the 70s and 80s, the veterans that had not a lot of places to go and to vent and to seek help, other than the VFWs and the American Legion Post themselves.
Yeah.
We didn't have that big influence of thank you for serving, so to speak, as we do now, and that's not a bad thing, to show you appreciation.
Well, like I said, Richard, I really appreciate. I know you've helped me a lot in many ways, and I do appreciate your enthusiasm for the American Legion. When you talk to the American Legion with you, and I know you basically light up. I mean, you're never shy about what you think's good about the American Legion, and you're not too good at taking criticism of it.
Well, that could be true.
Well, Richard, I appreciate all you've done in the military. Appreciate your time in the American Legion here, Post 121 in Bardstown,
And thank you for having me.
well, thank you for being here. And like I said, I know this is just to talk about you today, but we'll probably have you back many, many more times, talking about services or something that comes up that people have questions about, and that's what you're my go-to guy. So just stick around.
I'd love to have a subject and tell you what I know and how we can help to make it available to the veterans and stuff like that. So count me in on that.
All right, Richard Ness with the U.S. Army and Post 121 in Bardstown here with our community focus right here on Channel 6 TV. We'll be right back right after these messages.